find information or to escape, as we all need these times. The pandemic has affected us all in many ways, and of course, people of all age groups are struggling, young parents with childcare and work, while the elderly are more isolated than ever. But younger people, like us, are faring the worst with significant stress, anxiety, and depression. Young people tend to have different goals and relationships behaviors because of the way they perceive time. The projects we tend to focus on gaining new skills or getting new jobs are complicated as school is disrupted and employment is hard to find. It is hard for young people to gain social connections and act according to our sense of exploring a vast array of social opportunities. So in this world today, it is critical to put effort into our emotional wellness and close connections. And literature, art, and culture are here to help us. People are getting even more creative with their coping methods. They are making art, photography, music, writing, painting, and drawing. They are keeping people busy and distracted from the stresses of COVID-19. And art doesn't just unify us, it physically benefits us too. Studies show that spending just 45 minutes on an art project can relieve stress, strengthen critical thinking skills, and improve or sustain our memory. And in this showcase, myself and Lauren Tanse, hello Lauren, we will have a talk with young and promising writers. Lauren is the coordinator of annual Galway Student Volunteering Program Alive. Lauren has developed a number of resources to support student volunteers, and hi also to all the volunteers from the Alive program, Lucy and Rachel. Now our first guest is Chiara O'Loughlin. She's a student on the MA in English. She's the founder of the NUIG Design, to which staff and students were invited to submit creative pieces. Hi, Chiara.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm fine. You approached the university with your idea for the NUIG Design. Can you tell us what it is exactly?
So it's basically an arts journal that everyone involved in the university setting can contribute to during the lockdown while we're all off campus, to encourage people to get creative and to kind of bring people together to, make something that can be shared.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about all the submissions you received?
Oh, they were great. Such a high standard. I was and like so many people contributed. I was really not expecting it at all. It was really, really wonderful to go through all the submissions.
Do you write yourself?
Yeah, I do. I'm a writer, mainly poetry at the moment. And so I would have submitted to a lot of zines. I really like the online zine community, and that's why I wanted to make the zine, because not everything you write, you want other people to see. But if you haven't really been submitting stuff for publishing work before, sometimes you don't know where to start or where to submit anything to. So you just kind of need to have the opportunity shoved in your face. You go, okay, let's give it a go.
Can you share with us why you wanted to volunteer and to run a zine project? What was in it for you personally or for others?
Personally, from a selfish standpoint, I love reading so much. And with my course, I don't really get to read for pleasure too much. So reading through the submissions was kind of my reading for pleasure and encouraged me to read more in my spare time. So that was really wonderful. And I just really wanted to encourage people to get creative. And for any, like I said, new writers that haven't submitted work to places before, or artists or photographers, just to really give them a boost and a platform to show their work as well.
Okay. How were you personally inspired during the lockdown? What did you inspire?
Oh, I suppose I only really got into, I would say, poetry, really, for me. That's what because I would have always written flash fiction or short fiction before. And for me, poetry, because it's so quick to read for pleasure, it's something that's really practical to read. It takes a long time to write, but it's just the whole process from reading to writing poetry. I just absolutely fell in love with it.
The annual design started with the goal to encourage staff and students to get creative during their time off campus. There's so much talent in the community, and it is really inspiring how many people submitted their work and time to this project during the isolating and stressful times of campus. Thank you so much, Kira. Thank you.
Thank you.
We love what you're doing, and it's an amazing idea. And I look forward to reading the pieces. And you can find it actually on the website, which is nuigalway.ie/alive. You can find the zine. So yeah, to check what students did. And now let's hear from students that contributed to the zine. So the first artist is Blawin. Hi, Blawin.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So what did you take to writing or creating during the pandemic?
Well, I contributed an illustration to the zine. So my illustration was of a little girl who's sitting at a table and she's writing a letter. So really it was inspired by how I restarted writing letters again during the lockdown, especially to my granny because she loves receiving letters. But it's not something we really have time for these days. But of course, the lockdown gave us a bit more time for doing things like that.
I checked your Instagram. I loved what you're doing. I think it's
Thank you very much.
And I love the postcards also, like that you did in the end of the year last year, and it's beautiful. What benefits of being creative in this time did you feel?
Well, I felt like the lockdown was great for giving me time to work on art that was just for me. Because when the lockdown started, I was still in secondary school and I was studying art. And so all of my creative energy had to go into my art project. So it was fitting a criteria for someone else. Whereas the lockdown gave me time to do things that were just for me and just the way I wanted them to be. Which is why I wrote another kids' book during the lockdown.
And what is the process that you're doing when you create something? Do you have a special routine or something?
Yes, well, actually, my illustration style is a little bit different. I work in photographic illustration. So I draw my characters and I cut them out. And then I use a mixture of doll's house furniture and things that I've made myself, as well as like patterned paper and things like that. And I set up little scenes and then I use my camera to take a photo of it. So it's really macro photography.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for your creative work, the main one?
For the zine, my inspiration for that, as I say, it was the fact that I got the chance to start writing letters again. Because I just feel there's something very nice about receiving an actual physical letter in the post, because so much of what we do these days is just all online, and well, especially now during the lockdown when we have to be online all the time. So yeah, I just wanted to encourage people to maybe start writing again, because it's something I did a lot when I was younger as well.
What are your recommendations for music, writing, reading to support the creative process?
Well, I would say if anyone has any interest in doing anything creative, music or writing or drawing or whatever it is you like to do, well, really, I would say just start. Like, starting is the hardest part. Really, you just have to, just give it a go and believe in yourself.
Yeah, true. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And now we're gonna talk to Maureen. Hi, Maureen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Well, thanks.
So tell me more about what you wrote for the zine.
Yeah, so my piece, it's a short story. It's called Can't See Nothing. And writing it, I was thinking specifically of the Southern Gothic, so American Southern Gothic literature.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I hope
love
so.
Gothic.
People find it nice anyway, but yeah, so I was kind of going for that tone, and hopefully that comes across in it.
Okay. And what benefits of being creative in this time did it bring to you? Did you feel?
I'm sorry?
What benefits of being creative did it bring to you?
So as it was mentioned earlier, I'm doing my PhD in English, so it's kind of nice to have a little break as well from the more academic side of things, to just, be maybe a little cliche, but creative in that sense, to kind of step away from it all as a breather.
Do you have a piece to share with us, something you wrote?
Yeah, I've got a little something from Can't See Nothing, my short story, so I'll just read a little snippet, teaser, as it were. Thunderbird Williams had called it quits at the card table after a spectacular loss and headed to the bar. There wasn't much else to do in the meantime, and surely a little whiskey wouldn't hurt. With a deadpan expression, he found his friend there, his long, too lean frame hunched over as he listened to a shorter man speaking. Of course, he'd be at the bar before his set. It would have been better if he'd made his way to the card table. He would have won that big pot if he'd been there instead of here. His friend shifted what little weight he had from one foot to the other. Moving to stand beside him, he nodded towards the bartender, who immediately set to pouring him some whiskey. The shorter man, who he knew as Seth Moses, seemed to be going on about his favorite subject. Thunderbird always felt uneasy about his face. He looked like an old, premature baby with red skin that stretched taut over his skull. Hill people sometimes had that look, folk from the woods. It was difficult to look at him for too long, like his grotesqueness was somehow too revealing in some fashion. He looked at his friend. Why he lived at that cabin up that way was beyond him, but it was good to get him off the road and out of strange people's cars. He'd been lucky, at least in that way. The same couldn't be said for his girlfriend a few years back. Thunderbird took a drink. His friend wrote a song about her afterwards, and it was out on his last record. Sometimes he'd get a request or two to play it. He never did.
Beautiful. I'd love to read more of your work, to be honest, especially if it's a bit graphic. So what was the main inspiration for your work?
Yeah, so I was thinking specifically of, going back to the Southern Gothic thing, of this writer, Flannery O'Connor.
Mm-hmm.
So she was active in the mid-20th century, so 1950s, early 1960s. And, this kind of preoccupation that she has with the grotesque and what we can learn from the grotesque, or people that, she says are quote unquote freaks, right? People that we perceive to be freakish in some way, like physically they may be missing something, or, there's something just not quite right about them. And what their grotesqueness reflects on us, and what we can learn from that about ourselves. So that's kind of what I was thinking in writing this.
What would you recommend to read, to listen to get inspired and to create?
Not to plug Flannery O'Connor like I am, but if you haven't read Flannery O'Connor, if you're looking for something pretty creepy, she's the way to go. She's got this great short story called A Good Man is Hard to Find. Mm-hmm. There's also an audio recording of her reading it on YouTube. So if you're not keen on
creepier,
so you can just go on YouTube, read it, listen to it, read it. But I was thinking of that certainly. And as far as listening to something goes, I would recommend Townes Van Zandt.
Okay.
Certainly.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll check your work, because if it's a bit gothic, it's totally my thing.
Thank you
so much. Now let's talk to Sai. Hi, Sai. How are you?
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm doing good.
Tell me more about the piece you wrote for the zine.
So my piece actually comes from my leaving cert time, so 3 years ago, I think. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's like a combination of what I experienced in secondary school and what my friends experienced, and friendships and relationships kind of thing.
Yeah. Would you like to read a little piece of your...
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, the girl in the corridor. Spending less and less time made it easier for Rachel to form a wall between us. We soon were exposed to so many understandings between us that we didn't realize we were fighting with each other for nothing. One conflict was so big that it separated me and her forever. We met in autumn, became friends in spring, and broke up in summer. At the end, Rachel was successful in separating us. But till this date, I still believe that if I had told her how I really feel about her, we wouldn't have been separated, not even by Rachel. It's been 20 years now. I still remember her face from the first time I saw her in the corridor. She might be a doctor, a wife to someone, or even a mother, but for me, she will always be the girl in the corridor.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful and it's quite mysterious. I like it. What was the inspiration of it? Is it personal?
I'd say kind of personal, but like it's a mixture of both fiction and personal.
Okay, we were all wondering who is the girl in the corridor.
Yeah.
What benefits of being creative during a pandemic did it bring to you? What did you feel?
Like Maureen said before, it kind of gave me a break from my assignments, my deadlines, and like regular things going on in college. Kind of more like a relaxation pastime, just to.
Have you always been writing?
I wrote a few short stories in Leaving Cert, but then I took a break with college, and then after NUIG Zine came around, and then Kira contacted everyone, I got back into it. Yeah.
And what would be your recommendations? What are your favorite authors, writers?
My favorite author was always J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter, and. Recommendation, I think everyone has like their own style, and when you make the story more personal, I think it's more better.
There's something quite poetic about your work. Are you inspired by some poets? Do you have some favorite poems?
No, I don't really read poems.
Because there's really something I feel in your work that is poetic. So yeah, you should maybe write poems too. Thank you so much, Sai. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's move on to Mia.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, very good.
So why did you submit your work to the zine?
Because I always been writing. It was like a passion for life. So I wrote my first story at 7, and I was taking maybe 2-3 year breaks, but I always kept coming back to it. And the thing is, I have lots of writing material, lots of stories, poems, but they're all just piling up in my computer. So when I saw this opportunity from Zine, I was like, it was a great chance for me to try and submit my work and see if it's actually any good or not. Because before that, it was never graded by anyone. It was just in the laptop.
And what benefits did it bring to you to be creative?
It helped with lots of emotions, as in writing helps us to process emotions or difficult situations. So it definitely helped staying optimistic through difficult times. And also, I think through stories, you can, let's say if you write for children, and you can teach them to be kind from very early age. So then, I don't know, they grow up knowing that you have to be kind and polite to other people. So you can also kind of try and pass your knowledge through the work, or pass the things that you maybe learn later in life, but you can write them down so your readers can learn them before you.
And what was the inspiration for this work that you submitted?
Well, it's actually, the inspiration was my 2 best friends. I combined their qualities, and I took everything good from one person and everything good from the other, and I just shaped them into one ideal character, and that's how I created the story.
That's a great idea to do, to create characters. And what was the inspiration when you were a kid and you started writing?
Well, it's hard to say exactly, but I always liked cartoons or fairy tales. I love the idea of adventure, magic, and kindness, and good wins over bad, and that kind of I really loved escaping into that world of wonder when maybe I got a bad grade or I had an argument with somebody, and I could just escape into the fairy tale. I guess I like that idea of escape, so I created it for other people.
Do you have a writing process?
Kind of, I suppose. I never force myself to write. I always wait for ideas to come. I always write in a notebook first, so I have lots of notebooks because I prefer to have one notebook for one project. So in the end, I don't get confused if I'm searching for something. I have one particular notebook for all my children's stories because they are short And in order not to have like thousands of notebooks, I just have one big one. And I prefer to write by hand, first of all, because I think it helps to clear the mind. And then when I write on the laptop, it's kind of you're editing yourself as you go. So it's not like you're starting from blank page.
Mhm.
So I think it's always important to have a notebook and pencil nearby so you can just jot your ideas down and then see if you can develop them later.
Would you like to read a piece of your work?
Yes, I will read just a small bit from childhood. Are you ready to sell? All we need is your signature. Are you willing to give it? Am I willing? I do not know. In the past, these walls were the keepers of the greatest memories, memories of the wildest adventures. Am I willing to give them all away? Part with them forever and pack them all in boxes as if they were some kind of junk and not the best memories of my life? Why am I doing it? I do not know. Maybe I'm jealous that I can never return to those times, to the youth, to the wonder, to the times when everything was simple and nobody knew what lay ahead. Right now, everything is a mess. This house, garden, even I'm a mess. House is adorned with spider webs and dusty packages. To be honest, I have no idea why somebody would ever buy this house. It's filled with sadness and depression. I wonder how its walls haven't yet collapsed from the unbearable silence. Lily, are you ready? Yes, I am. I was given the final papers as we stood in the garden, which was just as desperate as the house, overgrown and abandoned, like everything in here. I placed my papers on the table and lifted my hand to grant them a final signature. I know that I need to sell this house, get rid of memories, and start anew. But something deep inside me told me I should not do it. However, my thoughts were interrupted by the phone call. It was Reynold. I had to go. I didn't sign anything. I will do so in the evening. Or maybe I won't. We met in our childhood backyard. A long time ago, our families lived in the apartments that were opposite one another and shared the same backyard. Reynold sat on the pavement that was both stiff and cold, and yet, for some strange reason, comforting. This was our childhood street, our street of memories and days that were long gone. Reynold propped himself against the wall. He was crying. His project was rejected. He was desperate. I knew he would fix it, but he didn't. I sat beside him. We sat in silence and looked at the street where we used to play as children and wondered where did the kids go. Then finally I broke the silence. Why did you call me? I didn't know who else to call. You were the only person who sprung to mind. I always struggled with the world, and you always loved it. I thought you could help me love it too.
Beautiful. There's a lot of energy in it. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
What would you recommend for us to read or to listen or to watch?
Well, in particular for reading, I really liked Cornelia Funke.
Mm-hmm.
Inkheart, she's a German writer. She writes for smaller children, but I think that Inkheart is a book that personally inspired me to write because there is a character who is a writer there, and he talks about inner struggles of the author and how sometimes the world we create ends up being kinder and nicer than the world we have to live in. So it's like, I don't know, the book just really spoke to me. And then I also like Neil Gaiman and Elizabeth Gillis. I loved her autobiography, which was Eat, Pray, Love. I just really liked it. I connected with it somehow. And I suppose I would always watch Jim Carrey for inspiration, for his craziness. I would always watch anything with Jim Carrey in it.
Great, thank you so much.
You're very welcome, thank you.
Now let's move on to Edin. It's a pre-recorded video, so I let you watch it, the interview.
Family Matters by Edin Cunahan. I was doing it, really doing it. My body tipped to fill the toes of new shoes. The bell echoed inside and I rocked to my heels, rooting myself. There was no turning back. The latch tutted. A faint blast of warm air greeted me before retreating back. A dull-haired woman blocked the door. You're Kelly's niece. Her feet shifted weight. ready for an onslaught. At any time she could take me out, see through my explanations. I gripped the plate. She glared. It was too late to turn back. I smiled. Eve Ryan, I wriggled my toes. Anything once I didn't shake. The gold digger, she announced. How fitting. The gold digger. Smug, she heard no contradiction. Her audacity. What could I say? I bit my tongue. The gap revealing carpeted stairs and coat hanger lessened. Like the sea reclaiming sand, I almost didn't notice. I came here because there's been a misunderstanding between us. I spoke to a slit of floral wallpaper. The interior sprawled before me once more. She turned up her stubby nose expectantly. Breathe in, breathe out. I could do this. Nicola, we're second cousins. First cousins once removed, she corrected. Hiring a hitman would have been easier. Maybe that's it. But what I came to say is family takes care of family, and I accept Uncle Simon's wishes. I kept myself still. I wouldn't jump at her. She stood waiting. I was very upset the night of his funeral. What I said to you was sudden and, well, it wasn't the best way to handle it. You're apologizing? She frowned, then wiped her expression like it was a chalkboard, a head full of dust, or best empty into her default of confidence. This better work. Why was I putting myself through this? I brought apple turnovers. This was it. Rejection or approval. Would she accept? What happens if she says no? My thumbnail whitened as I waited. I suppose they're from Lidl. Nicola hadn't closed the door. No, I made them this morning. I held the counterfeits up for inspection. The sun caressed the golden buttery pastry. So you're not taking legal action against me? Nicola eyed the pastries. No, I confirmed. It wouldn't be much use. If you wanted anything done right on this soggy green rock, you had to do it yourself. On an island where everyone knows everyone, keeping the peace means keeping quiet. And what do I do best but keep quiet? You can come in, she declared, as if granting passage to a palace and not some washed-out terrace house. She stepped back only a little. My tongue rebelled in the stranglehold of teeth as I shimmied between the primrose print and Nicola. She took the plate. I kept my coat on. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. That was brilliant. It's such a beautiful piece to hear you read out. I guess we want to start talking a small bit about your process in writing and how this is impacted by the pandemic and how you coped with the pandemic through writing. So why did you take to writing and creating during the pandemic?
I suppose I've always been writing and creating. You have a lot more time, I suppose, to edit during the pandemic. As I said earlier, I actually wrote this piece 4 years ago in sixth year of secondary school, but I edited it twice this year. So I suppose how the pandemic has really impacted me is I've done a lot of editing.
Great stuff. It's nice to hear that you have plenty of time to come back and rework pieces and have that space during a pandemic. It's like a silver lining.
Yeah, it's, I suppose when you think back on it, it is nice to say that, you got something out of it.
Yeah. And so what benefits of being creative in this time do you think? What are the benefits of being creative during this time, during the pandemic?
Totally lose complete sanity. You hold on to the last piece of sanity. It's an escape, reading, it's an escape. Writing is trying to, well, for me anyway, when I write things, no matter how bizarre they get, it just kind of helps me rationalize the world and like put things in order, and it can give control when you have no control. So I'm sure there are people like you might find this like it's really unpredictable, you know, unprecedented times is all the emails say. It's nice to have something you can control.
Thank you. What was the inspiration for your creative work?
The piece I just read, I suppose family feuds. Just hearing about people talking and being like, ooh, I wonder what would happen if someone who's very passive, you know, went into action. I think that'd be very interesting. But yeah, I don't know if you've read the story, but like it gets very passive aggressive.
And finally, what are your recommendations for music, writing, reading to support the creative process?
That's such a deep question. Sorry. I suppose read a lot. Like I sometimes if I'm stuck when I'm writing, I think it helps to like listen to a piece of music and then write after it. Or like I do think using like a photo as a prompt is a very helpful way to like get yourself like back into writing if you're stuck. And I know sometimes just like taking my favorite line of something, or just like listening to people and like, this sounds so bad, eavesdropping, and if you hear something interesting, jotting it down and being like, ah yes, this would make an interesting story, the what ifs of that. Yeah, I suppose I really like radio plays as well, so I'd listen to a lot of those, and that'd be like a lot of like the more you read and listen to, the more like inspiration you draw from them, that kind of way.
Thank you, Lorraine, Lucy, and Rachel for this interview. Now, Lorraine, Lucy, and Rachel will join the discussion. Lorraine, you wrote a piece for the zine too?
Yeah. I did indeed. And my piece is not as amazing as some of the artists who are present here today. Basically, I attended an event where young people were speaking about how they were engaged in advocacy in their community. And the piece that I wrote was looking at how you can change things, how you can be empowered during a pandemic, how some of these amazing young leaders that we have in the community are out there and they're changing the world and they're really raising issues and they're standing up for rights and they're making a significant change for all of us. And I think that even during COVID, we need to focus on what we can control and see how we can contribute, see how we can give back. This is our community, this is our country, this is our world, and we all have a role to play. So I was delighted to take part in the zine and also just to actually highlight some of those young people who have become like heroes to me, actually, because I think the work they're doing in rural parts of the country and locally, it is life-changing for an elderly person to get a visit from a young person, to have someone to talk to deal with those sort of human issues on the ground. And loneliness is also a pandemic in itself now. So these issues where we share our experiences and we support each other, we need to be doing more of this. And the NUIG zine brought together a wonderful group of people, and 61 pages well done of just the most amazing work. And I think it is something that hopefully will continue beyond this year, I would say. I don't know if Rachel has any thoughts.
Yeah, so I was going through, like, I was reading the zine and I was just like, oh my God, this like, I'm not very creative at all. So I was like, it's a great space to go and like actually read other people's creativity. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I could never do that. Like, I would like to be able to go and like potentially try it, even if it was terrible, just sitting down and just like, I think it's just something that's great to look back on in the future. And you can even show like, you know, your family or your own children later down the line. And it's something that like brings you back to this time. Like, even if it's such a difficult time, you can capture how you're feeling at that time. I think it's just amazing to be able to do that. That some kind of piece of like art or literature can just really capture how your mindset was in this very strange and
weird time. I think everybody can agree with that, very strange and weird time, but such a beautiful time to be able to explore yourself creatively, creatively.
So now that we interviewed the artists, let's talk a little. And I think we're happy to talk about what was inspiring and helped our creativity. So, for example, Lauren Tansey, what brought your, I don't know, were you inspired during this lockdown, and did you write or what did you read?
Well, I found volunteers really inspiring throughout the whole, I suppose, since this time last year in April and March time, we've seen lots of students and the wider community really be creative and have different approaches to how they can connect with others. So I have found that when, for example, Kira as a volunteer approached the university and said, let's do a zine, we were like, yes, let's do it. And so by saying yes to things and putting those platforms out, look at what's happened today in terms of bringing that process to fruition and then getting to showcase it at the fabulous Eye on the Edge Festival. Blóin, I especially want to give a little shout out to you because we had a conversation, and what I thought was really interesting is that you also did some independent publishing. So there might be a platform like a zine in your college or in your school environment, but Blóin, you just took the reins and said, I'm publishing something independently on my own website. So would you like to share the guide that you created for families and guardians and parents who are trying to keep maybe small people very entertained at the minute? Do you want to share that process?
Yeah, so last March, as I say, that was when I wrote the book. It was my third book for children, and it really just gives a short, it's in a story form, but it kind of just roughly explains what's happening in the pandemic in child-friendly language. And it's about two friends who can't meet up, so they have to Zoom like we're doing now. And it also gives them lots of ideas of things they can do during the pandemic. So it's kind of trying to reframe the way we think about the pandemic, or the way children think about it. Because obviously I was just thinking of how scary it must be for children, especially back then when we really knew nothing about the pandemic. All they know is that it makes people really sick. So yeah, it was about trying to reframe the pandemic a little bit into more of almost a holiday, a time for when you can do fun and creative things. So yeah.
Brilliant. Give us a flash of your book there so that we can all see it. And yeah, I think that's really exciting that all the volunteers here on today's panel, you know, you saw something like the zine being advertised. Kira, you created the platform for people to get involved in it. But you can, I suppose, as Blóin has done, is go out on your own as well and use that as an avenue. Or Sophia, I mean, you've created a publishing company. I mean, what a fantastic, inspiration, I think, for lots of young people. It doesn't matter what age you are, to tap into that creative channel. And if you feel like sharing it, then there might be some platforms or avenues, or create your own. If there isn't, create your own platform and see those opportunities.
It's really important in these difficult times to just be creative and do whatever we like and get inspired. And planning on doing also, so I have Dubh Publishing. I'm planning on doing something like a Dubh magazine, like something every month online. And so I'm thinking about Maureen, if you write Gothic things, I'd love a piece of you in the next magazine that I'm working on, if you would agree. Or
that would be great if you'd be willing to.
It would be like quite a goth magazine. So yeah. Okay. Irish goth magazine. So it was lovely to talk to you. Lauren Tansey, can you tell me more a bit about the Alive program?
Brilliant. So yes, we are the volunteering support program on our campus at NUI Galway, and any student that has an idea or a project, we can help make it come to fruition. And we also partner with over 300 non-profit charities in Galway and beyond to provide great opportunities to build civic skills and to engage in community action, like Lorraine was talking about. And we have a big celebration coming up on the 5th of May. We take a moment every year to thank all the students who have volunteered all year with our big ceremony and we're very excited that we're going to have the Mayor of Galway City attending, and we'll be featuring the NUIG zine, of course, again at that event. And really just want to encourage people, if they'd like to listen to music, see the images, the photographs, continue to read those stories you got little snippets of there, check out the poems, have a little look, nuigoy.ie/alive, and click on the news, and you'll see in the newsreel the link to the zine. So have a good read of that and enjoy.
And Lauren, last question before we off. What would you recommend, as you're full of energy and
I suppose,
read, to listen, to watch?
Yeah, I'm a real big fan of TED Talks and challenging perceptions. I like to read things that are like, I suppose, maybe from minority groups, Indigenous groups as well. So some of my favorite writers are, for example, you can read short stories written by Irish travelers. There's fantastic publications. I love How to Be a Feminist, a great book as well. So I just think sometimes reading can be a little portal, into a whole nother world and perspective, and we all could really do with diversifying. Because often within maybe curriculum, we're exposed to maybe some of the same types of stories. So we do need to really push ourselves to, read and expose our brains and ideas to different thoughts from different parts of the world.
So thank you, everyone. It's the end of the event. Thank you so much to all the participants, Lauren, Lucy, Rachel, and all of our artists. And to you all who are attending online. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Huge thank you to the team Eye on the Edge. It was an honor to be part of this festival. Thank you to Galway 2020 and the European Parliament in Ireland for organizing this and to believe in young people's creative minds and giving us the space to share our creativity and what we have to say. Special thanks to Noleg and Jer and the technical team. And have a beautiful and sunny Sunday, and take care of yourselves.
Round of applause for our host, Sophia! Group hug.